Hey fellas, my name's Matt, and up until a few weeks ago, I thought my marriage was solid. Sure, we had our ups and downs, like any couple, but Lily and I had been together for almost 10 years. We met in college, went through the struggle years together, built a life that I thought was unshakable. I was convinced we were one of the lucky ones. Then the accident happened. Lily was in a bad car crash about 6 months ago. It was bad. Like, I thought she was going to die bad. She spent weeks in the hospital, multiple surgeries, physical therapy. It was brutal. But through it all, I was there. I took care of everything: our home, our bills, her family, her recovery. I put my job on hold, practically lived in that hospital room, and did whatever I could to make things easier for her. Because that's what you do when you love someone, right? But when she came home, something changed. At first, I chalked it up to trauma. She'd been through hell, so of course she was going to be different. She was distant, short-tempered, always lost in her own world. She barely wanted to be touched. Sex, forget about it. I didn't push, again, trauma. But something in my gut told me it wasn't just that. She started acting weird with her phone. Before the accident, we had that "your phone is my phone" kind of trust. No passwords, no secrets. But now she kept it on her at all times, and if I even glanced in its direction, she'd clutch it like I was about to snatch it from her. Then there were the late-night calls with her mom, the whispered conversations in the other room, the text messages she'd clear the second she read them. But the real kicker? She started crying at night. I'd wake up at 2 or 3 a.m., and she'd be sitting on the edge of the bed, sobbing. Not just little sniffles, full-on breakdowns. And when I'd ask what was wrong, she'd brush me off. "It's nothing, I'm fine." I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her so bad, but deep down, I already knew. I'll never forget the day we got the news. Lily had been complaining about pain for a while: headaches, dizziness, fatigue. At first, we thought it was just part of her recovery from the accident, but it wasn't getting better. If anything, it was getting worse. So we went back to the doctor. More tests, more scans, and then the bomb dropped. Stage 4. The words barely registered at first. It was like watching a movie. Like I wasn't really there, just observing some poor guy's life fall apart. But it was real. The doctors said she had months, maybe a little more with treatment, but the outcome wasn't changing. I sat there staring at the floor, listening to the doctor talk about options: pain management, hospice care, making the most of the time she has left. And Lily, she just nodded. No tears, no shock, like she already knew. The drive home was silent. I wanted to say something, anything, but nothing felt right. What do you even say to the person you love when you know they're dying? "It's going to be okay" felt like a goddamn joke. It wasn't going to be okay. By the time we pulled into the driveway, something inside me shifted. If this was all the time we had left, I wasn't going to waste it. I pushed every doubt, every weird feeling I'd had for months aside. I told myself, none of it matters now. She's dying. I need to be here for her. That night, I held her in bed, listening to her breathing, feeling the weight of everything settle on my chest. And then she whispered, "I have one last wish." I squeezed her hand. "Anything!" She turned to me, eyes shining in the dark. "I want to spend one night with the man I've always loved." And just like that, my world ended. At first, I thought I misheard her. My brain just refused to process the words. So, like an idiot, I asked, "What?" Lily didn't hesitate, didn't flinch. She just looked at me, calm, almost relieved, like she'd been holding this in for years. "I want to spend one night with him before I go, just once." I swear, my heart actually stopped beating for a second. I sat up in bed, staring at her like she'd grown another head. Was she joking? Some kind of messed up trauma-fueled delirium? But no, she was serious, dead serious. And when I didn't respond, she sighed like I was the one being difficult. "Matt, please, you have to understand." Understand? Understand what? That my dying wife, who I've given everything for, who I was ready to take care of until her last breath, was asking me to let her have sex with another man before she died? That wasn't a wish. That was a knife to the gut. I felt sick. My whole body was shaking, but I had to ask, "Who?" She hesitated, and that was enough. The moment of silence, the way she bit her lip, the way she suddenly couldn't look me in the eyes, I knew. There was already someone. This wasn't some fantasy. This wasn't random. She had been in love with someone else this entire time. I couldn't speak, couldn't move, just sat there, staring at the woman I thought I knew, feeling like my entire marriage had just been a joke I was too stupid to see. And the worst part? She actually looked relieved now that it was out in the open. Like she thought I was going to understand. Like she thought I was just going to let it happen. I don't remember how long I sat there staring at her. A minute, An hour? Time just stopped making sense. Lily didn't fill the silence. She just sat there, waiting, like she expected me to process it and come back with a rational response. I finally found my voice, but it didn't sound like mine. So let me get this straight. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. You're telling me after everything, after 10 years after I've taken care of you, after I was ready to spend every second making sure your last days were as peaceful as possible, you're asking me to let you sleep with another man? She flinched at how harsh it sounded, but that's what she said. I just repeated it. And then she actually rolled her eyes like I was the one being unreasonable. Matt, it's not like that. Oh, really? I laughed. I couldn't help it. It just bubbled up, this awful hollow laugh, because what else was I supposed to do? But I needed to hear it from her. I needed her to actually say the words. Who is he? She bit her lip. More hesitation. She knew this was the point of no return. And then, barely above a whisper, she said it. Tom. I swear, I felt my stomach drop. Tom. My best friend. The guy I'd known since college. The guy who had been my best man at our wedding. The guy who had helped me move into my first apartment. The guy who had been there for me through everything. And apparently the guy my wife had always loved. I thought back to all those times he'd been around. The late night hangouts, the inside jokes they had, the way she'd always acted a little too comfortable with him. How long had this been going on? I felt like I couldn't breathe. So what, you've been cheating on me this whole time? She immediately shook her head. No, Matt, I swear it's not like that. I never actually did anything. I always had feelings for him, and now that She stopped, took a breath. I don't want to die with regrets. I almost lost it right there. She didn't want to die with regrets. And what about me? What about everything she was throwing away? Did I not matter? Was I just some placeholder for him? Was our entire marriage a lie? She reached for my hand, but I jerked away like she was made of fire. I couldn't do this. Not now, not here. I got up and walked out. She called after me, but I was already out the door, into my truck, driving anywhere but there. And for the first time in my life, I didn't know if I was ever going to go back. I don't even remember where I drove that night, just that I needed to get out. The house, the room, her, all of it felt suffocating. I couldn't be near her, not after what she had just said. I parked somewhere, maybe a gas station, maybe some empty lot, I don't even know. Just sat there, gripping the wheel, my entire body shaking. How was this happening? How did I go from planning my wife's last few months, making sure she wasn't alone in her final days, to this? To her confessing that she had loved another man all along, and not just any man, Tom. I wanted to scream. I wanted to punch something. I wanted to wake up from this nightmare where my dying wife had just admitted she had wasted my time, wasted our marriage, wasted everything on some unspoken, bullshit fairy tale love she had for my best friend. And what was I supposed to do now? I could give her what she wanted, let her go to him, let her have her perfect night while I sat downstairs like some pathetic idiot waiting for her to be done, or I could tell her no. Tell her to go to hell, pack my things, walk away, and leave her to die alone. The thought made my stomach turn. I loved her. Even after everything, I loved her. But I hated her too. And I hated myself for still caring. I must have sat there for hours. My phone buzzed a few times, Lily obviously. I ignored every single call. I wasn't ready to go back. Not yet. Not until I knew what the hell I was going to do. By the time I finally dragged myself home, the sun was already coming up. I half expected Lily to be asleep, or at least pretending to be. But no, she was waiting for me. Sitting on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, eyes red like she'd been crying all night. For a split second, I felt something. Pity, maybe? But then I remembered why she was crying. It wasn't because she felt guilty for what she did to me. It wasn't because she realized she had completely shattered the life we built. No. She was crying because she thought I wasn't coming back. I stood in the doorway, staring at her, waiting for her to say something. An apology, an excuse, anything. Instead, she whispered, "I thought you left." I scoffed. Maybe I should have. Her lip trembled, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to comfort her, not for this. I walked into the kitchen, grabbed a beer, yes, at 6 a.m, don't judge me, and sat down across from her. I wasn't going to let her control the conversation. Tell me the truth. How long? She swallowed hard. Matt, it's not... How long, Lily? I slammed the beer on the table. She jumped. She hesitated, and that told me everything. I never cheated, she finally said, voice shaking, but I've loved him for a long time. I closed my eyes. Define a long time. Silence. I looked at her, and for the first time I saw it, the regret The guilt, the way she had been hiding this for years, but was too much of a coward to ever admit it. And then she whispered it. Since before we got married. I felt everything inside me go cold. 10 years. 10 years. Our entire marriage, our entire life together. Every moment I had thought we were happy, every time she had told me she loved me, every time I looked at her like she was my whole damn world, it had all been a lie. She had been in love with Tom this whole time. I leaned back in my chair laughing bitterly. Well, what was I, a backup plan? She flinched but didn't answer. I nodded. That's what I thought. For the first time in my life, I looked at my wife and felt nothing but disgust. I used to think she was the best thing that ever happened to me. Now I was realizing she was the biggest mistake of my life. I don't know how long we sat there staring at each other. The air between us was thick, like the last dying seconds before a bomb goes off. And then she did something that almost made me lose my mind. She reached for my hand. Like she thought I was still that guy. The one who would always be there, who would always put her first, who would do anything to make her happy. But I wasn't him anymore. I yanked my hand away, my jaw clenched so tight I thought my teeth would crack. So what now? My voice came out cold, emotionless. Lily's lip trembled. I don't want to lose you, Matt. I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. Lose me? Lily, you never had me. I was just a placeholder while you waited for Tom. She shook her head. That's not true. Oh, really? I leaned forward, my heart hammering in my chest. If the accident hadn't happened, if you weren't dying, would you have ever told me? Silence. And there it was. She wouldn't have. She would have kept lying, kept playing the role of the perfect wife, while deep down she wished I was someone else. I ran a hand through my hair, exhaling slowly. My body was buzzing with adrenaline, rage, something darker that I didn't even want to name. I had a choice to make. Option 1, I could walk away, leave her, let her die knowing that she had destroyed the only person who ever truly loved her. Let her sit in that house, alone, with nothing but the weight of her own guilt pressing down on her until her last breath. Option 2, I could stay, be the husband she had never deserved, be the one to hold her hand in those final moments, knowing the whole time that she had already given her heart to someone else. Neither option felt good, neither option felt right. But then, as I stared at her, this woman I had spent a decade loving, this woman who had betrayed me in the worst possible way, a third option started creeping into my mind. A darker one, a colder one. I had spent years being the fool in her story. Maybe it was time to turn the tables. I should have left. I wanted to leave. But the longer I sat there, watching Lily cry, watching her try to piece together the right words to make me stay, the more something inside me shifted. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about me. She had spent years lying to me, smiling in my face, telling me I was her everything, while in the back of her mind she was dreaming about him, Tom, my best friend. And now, after all this time, she had the audacity to ask me to let her be with him before she died? No, hell no. I wasn't going to just roll over and take it. She wanted her final wish? Fine. But I was going to have one too. Something twisted settled in my chest, a fire I hadn't felt before. A burning, vengeful fury that was deeper than just heartbreak. I looked at Lily, really looked at her. She still thought she had the upper hand. She still thought I was the same man who would do anything for her. She had no idea, not yet. I exhaled slowly, letting my anger simmer just beneath the surface, keeping my face calm. And then I did something that made her stop crying instantly. I smiled. A slow, easy, almost amused smile. Lily blinked, confused. Matt? I leaned forward, resting my arms on my knees. My voice was steady when I spoke. Too steady. Okay. She froze. What? I nodded, still smiling. You want this? You want to have your last night with him? I tilted my head. Then let's do it. I won't stop you. Her mouth parted slightly, like she hadn't expected me to agree. I stood up, stretched like this was the most casual conversation in the world. I'll call Tom. Invite him over. We'll set this up just how you want it. She stared at me, hesitant. Matt, are you serious? I met her eyes, completely. For the first time since this conversation started, she looked nervous. Good. She should be, because she had no idea what I was planning next. Lily just sat there, frozen. She was waiting for me to snap, to scream, to fall apart like she expected me to. But I didn't. I stayed calm, collected, because this wasn't about pain anymore. It was about control. I pulled my phone from my pocket, scrolling through my contacts. My thumb hovered over Tom's name, and for a split second, a different kind of rage hit me. How long had he known? How many times had we been in the same room, laughing, drinking, hanging out while he knew my wife loved him? Did he love her back? I clenched my jaw. It didn't matter. I glanced up at Lily. She was pale, her hands clenched together. Now she looked scared. Matt, wait! I held up a finger, silencing her as I hit call. It rang twice before he answered. Hey, man. Tom's voice came through, groggy, probably just woke up. He had no idea. What's up? I forced a friendly tone. Hey, listen, can you come over? Tom hesitated. Now? Yeah, I said, glancing at Lily. Lily and I have something to talk to you about. Silence. Then, is everything okay? I smiled. It will be. Lily sucked in a breath, shaking her head at me. Her eyes were begging now. Don't do this. But she started this game, not me. Tom sighed. Yeah, all right, I'll be there in a bit. I hung up before he could say anything else. Lily was gripping the blanket so hard her knuckles were white. Matt, please. I leaned down, placing my hands on my knees so I was eye level with her. My voice was soft, mocking. You wanted this, right? She swallowed hard. Not like this. I tilted my head. No, because it seemed pretty clear to me you wanted one last night with the man you've always loved. Well, I smiled wider. Wish granted. Her breath hitched. Matt, I straightened up, cutting her off. Oh, and before I forget, I gestured toward the bedroom. I have one last wish, too. She stared at me, silent. I leaned in, my voice dropping. I want to watch. Lily's face drained of color. And that's when I knew. I had her. Lily looked like she was about to throw up. She opened her mouth and closed it, then opened it again, but no words came out. I just stood there, watching her squirm. This was the first time in our entire marriage that I had control. She had spent years lying to me, hiding her feelings, keeping me in the dark while she secretly loved another man. And now she was the one feeling trapped, cornered, and I was enjoying every second of it. Matt, she finally whispered, shaking her head, you don't mean that. I leaned against the wall, crossing my arms. Why not? You want your last wish, I want mine. Her breathing was shallow. Her hands were gripping the blanket like a lifeline. She swallowed hard. I can't do this. I raised an eyebrow. Can't do what? Her voice cracked. I can't sleep with him. For a second, I almost laughed. Now she has morals? Now she gives a damn? I stepped forward. Why not? This is what you wanted, isn't it? A chance to be with the man you've always loved? Her eyes filled with tears. I didn't think it would be like this. I exhaled slowly. And how exactly did you think it would be, Lily? I shook my head. Did you think I'd cry? Beg? That I'd just quietly accept it and still hold your hand while you slipped away? She flinched, but I wasn't done. I spent 10 years thinking I was the love of your life, and in one conversation you took all of that and threw it in my face like it was nothing. I took another step forward. So now I want to see it. I want to see how much you love him. I want to see what I was never good enough for. Tears rolled down her face. Matt? Please. I tilted my head. Please what? She let out a shaky breath. Please don't do this. I just stared at her, waiting. I wanted to see her say it. Finally, after what felt like forever, she spoke. I don't want to be with him, she whispered. I don't want my last night with Tom. There it is. I didn't react. Just let her words hang in the air between us. I let her sit in the weight of her own fucking disaster. She wiped her face with the sleeve of her sweater. I thought I did. I really did, but when you said you'd let me, her voice cracked, I realized I didn't want it. I nodded slowly, like I was processing. So what? You're saying you love me now? Silence. She hesitated too long. I smirked. That's what I thought. Before she could say another word, the doorbell rang. Tom. Lily physically jumped at the sound. She looked up at me, panicked. Matt, please, don't tell him. I held her gaze for a long, long moment. Then without a word, I turned and walked to the door. The game wasn't over yet. I opened the door, and there he was. Tom. Looking at him now, I saw him differently. Not as my best friend, not as the guy I had trusted for years, but as the man my wife had been in love with this whole time, and I hated him for it. "Hey, man," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. Everything okay?" I forced a smile. "Yeah, come in." He hesitated. His eyes flicked toward the house like he could sense something was off. Good, he should. But he still stepped inside. Lily was sitting on the couch, eyes wide, hands still gripping that stupid blanket. She looked like she had just seen a ghost. Tom glanced between us. "What's going on?" I took my time closing the door, locking it, letting the silence drag out just long enough to make them uncomfortable. Then I turned to him, folding my arms. "Lily has something to tell you." She visibly stiffened. Tom looked at her, confused. "Lily?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her hands were shaking. This was it. I was making her say it out loud to his face. I could have told him myself. I could have thrown everything out there, watched his reaction, watched him squirm. But no. This was her mess. She needed to clean it up. Tom sat down across from her. "Lily?" His voice was softer now, concerned. "What's going on?" She glanced at me for half a second, like she wanted me to save her. But I didn't. Finally, she sucked in a deep breath, wiped her face, and spoke. "I told Matt about you." Tom froze. "What?" Her voice wobbled. "I told him the truth, that I've always had feelings for you." I watched his expression closely, every detail, every twitch, shock, then guilt, then panic. That told me everything I needed to know. Tom wasn't innocent in this. Maybe he never physically cheated with her, but he knew. He always knew. And he let me be the fool anyway. Lily kept talking, voice barely above a whisper. I thought I wanted one last night with you." Tom physically recoiled at that. "What?" Lily sniffed. "I asked Matt if he'd let me, and he said yes." Tom turned to me, wide-eyed. "Matt?" I smiled. "She wanted one night with the man she's always loved. Who was I to stop her?" Tom's face drained of color. "Dude, He turned back to Lily. "Lily, what the hell?" She shook her head frantically, tears spilling down her face. "I was wrong. I was so wrong." She wiped at her cheeks. "I don't want that. I don't want you." Silence. Tom looked like someone had just slapped him. Lily turned to me, eyes pleading. "I realized it last night. It's you, Matt. It's always been you." Bullshit. I kept my face unreadable. "Is that right?" She nodded. "I made the biggest mistake of my life." I let that sit in the air for a moment. Then I turned to Tom. "Well, buddy, what do you think?" He looked sick. I never meant for any of this." "Right," I said flatly. "Of course you didn't." More silence. Tom looked like he wanted to be anywhere but here. And Lily? She just looked broken. But the best part? She had no idea what was coming next. I let the silence stretch. Tom looked like he was about to pass out. Lily looked like she was waiting for me to say something, anything that would somehow fix this. But there was nothing left to fix. I leaned back against the wall, arms crossed, and took a slow breath. "So let me get this straight," I said, voice calm, too calm. I looked at Tom. "You knew, didn't you?" He opened his mouth, but I cut him off. "Vey, don't lie to me." He hesitated, then exhaled. He glanced at Lily, then back at me. "I didn't encourage it, but yeah, I knew." My jaw tightened. Of course he did. "Right." I nodded slowly, pushing down the storm building inside me. "And you, Lily," I turned to her, watching her shrink into the couch. "You want me to believe that after all these years, after everything you said last night, you suddenly changed your mind?" She nodded frantically, fresh tears rolling down her face. "Matt, please. I was wrong. I thought I loved him, but it was just a fantasy. You're the one who's always been there. You're the one I love. I see that now." I just stared at her. And for the first time since this whole nightmare started, I felt nothing. No love, no anger, no sadness. Just emptiness. I had spent years believing this woman was my soulmate, that no matter what, she'd always choose me. But she didn't choose me. She only came crawling back when she realized Tom didn't want her either. She only came back because she had nowhere else to go. I pushed off the wall, rubbing my hands together. "All right, I've made my decision." Lily perked up. "What?" I looked between them. "I'm done." Lily's whole body flinched. What?" I gestured toward the door. "You want to be with him? Be with him." Tom stiffened. "Matt." I ignored him. "But I'm done being your backup plan." I turned to Lily. "I spent 10 years loving you, thinking we were building something real. Turns out I was just a stand-in for someone else." I let out a small laugh. I can't believe I almost let you die thinking I'd still be here. She sucked in a breath, shaking her head wildly. No, no, Matt, I swear. No, I cut her off, stepping closer. You don't get to cry. You don't get to beg. You made your choice a long time ago. She tried to grab my hand. Please, I need you. I pulled away. You needed me when you thought Tom was out of reach, not before. Her face crumpled. And that's when she realized I wasn't playing her game anymore. I turned to Tom. She's your problem now. His eyes widened. Matt, I don't care, I said flatly. Figure it out. I walked past them, into the bedroom, grabbed a duffel bag, started throwing my stuff in. Lily followed me, sobbing, begging me to stop, to rethink, to stay. But I wasn't staying, not anymore. I slung the bag over my shoulder, walked back to the door. Tom was still standing there, awkward as hell, looking like he wanted to disappear. I didn't say another word, just walked out. And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt free. And that's how my marriage ended. No big explosion, no dramatic fight, just a slow, bitter realization that the woman I loved never really loved me back. I don't know what happened to them after I left. I don't care. All I know is I've never looked back, and I never will. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Tell me what you think about that story. Have a good day, and bye.